I think there are two key components there. First is knowing your asset inventory, which almost nobody knows. So that's actually one of the key foundations of our platform is how do we get you all of the assets that are your digital footprint, and then aligning them to your businesses. So at the end of the day, the CISO is a C-level executive or a SVP level executive that is reporting to the board, and they need to know the business of the company. They need to know what are the critical business units, which applications are the most critical that make money, and what is the annual revenue. So risk quantification does not have to be a super complex PhD level, formula and stuff like that. A lot of our customers at the beginning of this journey, they just basically pencil down, look, I'm a company that is $1 billion company, and I'm at a high level. We have 5 business units, and we know each business unit makes this much money, and I know that these assets are aligned with this business unit, these assets are aligned with this business unit, and you can start from there. And so the key for any risk management is value at risk. So what is your value at risk? And if you don't quite exactly know right now, look, if this attack happens, I will lose 50 million, 100 million. A lot of our CISOs in the initial part of the journey, actually, they just start off by penciling down the total revenue of that particular business unit as a starting point.
Hey, Sumedh, welcome to 20 Minute Leaders. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this chat. So, Sumedh, I think you have a really interesting job to do because I get to speak with CISOs and with company executives all day long at this point, and I get to hear about their challenges as it comes to different cybersecurity threats. And one of the things that we know is challenging is that cybersecurity is ever evolving. Quantifying its risk is not trivial. And just over the last 2 years, we've found ourselves in an agentic era where everything is changing. Old cybersecurity mechanisms are changing, new ones are evolving, and so I'm assuming that you have your work cut out for you. So it's going to be a fun conversation. Before we get into that, tell me a little bit about yourself. You've been with Qualys for more than 2 decades, and so would really love to hear about your journey.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yes, those are really interesting conversation. I'm looking forward to having those because cybersecurity. Look, I think we are in a world where digital transformation is accelerating at a pace we've never seen before, and it's enabling businesses, is enabling governments to provide amazing capabilities to their citizens, which they were not able to do in the past. And so the securing of that infrastructure is super important, but also at the same time we have to remember that cybersecurity is a risk management exercise. And so unfortunately we cannot just buy anything and everything that pops up and try to deploy it. We have to look at it from a risk equation perspective. So looking forward to that conversation. I think a little bit background for me. Yes, I have been in Qualys for 21 years. I like to say that it sounds a little bit better than 2 decades because decades sound a little bit old, but I feel like now I am legal at 21 in the United States, right? So it's
There you
one year.
go. Yeah, that's a good point.
But I joined. I of course I was born and brought up in India, and I came to the U.S. and I worked originally for Northwest Airlines reservation systems, and then I came to Qualys 21 years ago. I was one of the initial software engineers that wrote the code on our scanner that we had back then, and we were one of the crazy ones to think that we can deliver security services on the internet, which today, of course, cloud is a fashion statement. Everybody's cloud first, cloud fresh, cloud native. But we were really at the time pioneering in that. And from that, I have had the opportunity to really almost do every single role at Qualys that you could imagine in a company. And so I've done product management. After engineering, I did customer support. I did even IT, but it really gave me a really great perspective. And then 4 years ago, after being chief product officer for a while, I got the opportunity to take on the role of CEO as a public company in cybersecurity, and we've really created a great brand. So I'm pretty happy about the journey so far.
So cool. And so really it's cybersecurity is all about risk, right? So walk me through a little bit about how you think about risk in the context of cybersecurity. What is the role of risk quantification? What role does it play in the industry that we're in?
Look, I think today we have to separate what is a little bit difficult from what needs to be done, right? And the role of quantification, I almost feel like that's the only role of that you would have that is important in cybersecurity. Because when you say risk, what is the first question that comes to mind? How
How
much?
big is the risk?
Right. And most people are today not really able to quantify that, or haven't put the effort to quantify it that way. Uh, because the spend in cybersecurity for the last few years has been, as one of the CISOs I talked to said, that there was an open bar in the cybersecurity spend, and now that has changed, and you need to get your ticket for your drink from your CFO before you can move forward. And so it goes down back to the question of quantification. Risk quantification is, I think, absolutely paramount in cybersecurity, because if you don't know how much risk you have, you don't quantify that, how can you know how much you should spend on bringing that risk down?
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
If you have a $50,000 car and you're spending $50,000 to bring the risk down for that car, that's not good business, right? So
Sure.
any business should be looking at, well, how much is my risk? How much do I stand to lose in case there is a certain attack? And how much of that risk, and like with any risk, there are sort of three components, right? One is risk mitigation. How much should I spend in proactively mitigating the risk? Risk should never goes down to zero, right? You should really not. At some point, there's diminishing returns. So how much risk can I accept? And then the third part is, whatever I cannot mitigate or accept, I need to transfer that risk to a cyber insurance company. So at a very high level, if you don't get too deep into the excitement that vendors have about their unique technology, from a business, from a board and CEO and CFO level, cybersecurity is a risk management exercise, and it has to be grounded in quantification.
Yeah, and so I know one of the challenges I think of cybersecurity is that you have so many different parts of cybersecurity, right? I mean, effectively, you have dozens of different postures that you have to manage. There's thousands of tools, and so what is Qualys's role within the cybersecurity landscape in helping organizations both understand where they should be investing as well as actually solving some of these endpoints themselves?
Hey, look, I think risk management is a ever evolving journey, right? Because the risks keep changing, and so at the beginning you were just looking at maybe vulnerability scanning and patching, and then cloud security came about, and now with AI you have what you guys are working on, deep fakes and stuff, and which is, by the way, I had a crazy experience where one of my employees was contacted on WhatsApp, and that's typical. They use my picture and stuff like that, asking to spend money. However, this threat actor proactively offered the employee a Zoom call, and the employee, of course, being a cybersecurity employee, was obviously caught onto it. But he got on the Zoom call. What the threat actor did, they took a video I had posted on YouTube where I was speaking about something, and then played that video through Zoom as if I was on the call, but the audio was muted. So it was like, hey, I'm having issues with audio. Let's just go back to chatting on WhatsApp, and can you send me $1 million, right? So the technology was just basic social engineering thing, something you could have even done 10 years ago. But today the question is, well, how much does the company stand to lose if something like that happens, right? And so anchoring that is an ever evolving area of saying, well, what are the new digital modes come about, like agentic AI is coming about, what is the new risk that it is creating? And by the way, not everything creates a major risk, right? We've seen this with cell phone usage. When BYOD for mobile devices was a big thing, people were like, oh my God, this is going to be so bad. It turns out, in the bigger picture of all the various risks that you could have, that was not one of the major risks. And so as a company, you constantly have to evaluate the technology you're using. You have to evaluate the risk that can bring. And so couple years ago, cloud security was sexy, and now AI security is going to be top of mind. And by the way, by the time we figure out AI security, quantum's already knocking on the door, so everybody's going to be like, hey, what about quantum security, right? So it's ever evolving. So at Qualys, what we really realize, and we, like many vendors in the space, were like, hey, we are going to have the ultimate platform, that is the one platform that everybody can use, and they only need this one thing. And I think, to be fair, we have realized that in the industry, no CISO wants to go in that direction. They want to empower their team to pick the right solutions for whatever that specific job is, whether it's security of containers, whether it's security of cloud. But then they want to be able to talk business language, and business language is money. It's about how much money do I stand to lose if a particular attack happens. And then, by the way, based on my current tooling, what is the possibility of that attack happening? So the conversation needs to be, as an example, we have a $500 million a year business unit. If there is a outage created by cybersecurity, it's gonna cost us 10 million a day for 7 days. So that's 70 million. And by the way, based on the signals I'm getting from my cloud security and my on-prem security and all these different identity, everything, if I put all of it together, I can come up with a score that essentially is a proxy to say, if my score is 800 on 1,000, that's essentially saying the possibility of losing that much money is about 80%. And you want to bring that down to, say, an acceptable 30%. And now you know exactly the four things you need to do that and how much it is going to cost. So today, the conversation for cybersecurity leaders with the CFO is, hey, give me $2 more million and I will make it better. But they cannot explain how much better. Now, the conversation can be, by the way, the potential of losing $70 million today is very high. Uh, if I spend $500,000, I can bring that risk level down from 80 to 30. And so now the CFO is, that makes sense. Can I invest $500,000 to reduce the possibility of losing 70 million a day, a week by 80%? Yes. So that's the conversation that needs to have. And so Qualys, we introduced the concept of a risk operations center. Everybody's been using a security operations center for reactive threat detection. But what about proactive risk management? And so instead of sort of trying to go and replace all the tools the customer have, we created a risk operations center that feeds in from all the existing tools that they have, provide risk quantification, provide the ability to aggregate findings, then provide a way to report on that. But most importantly, the most important thing in cybersecurity is remediation. So now provide a way to actually fix issues. And back in the day when we started, came up with the idea 5 years ago of actually doing patch management while doing vulnerability management. People thought we were crazy to do that. But just in 2024, Qualys agents deployed 110 million patches in our customer environment in 1 year. So at the end of the day, I always say this, like, you can spend $10 million in building nice dashboards and taking selfies with that, but if you didn't fix the issue before the attacker comes, all of that money was a waste. So how do we create an operations center that operationalizes your risk management, prioritizes the things that are actually important, but not important because they are hot and sexy. It's important because it's going to impact your business by a certain amount of money. And then you focus on fixing those first. And that's really what we are been focusing on now with our enterprise risk management platform and the ability to provide board reporting using a risk operations center.
Now, I have when I'm considering the conversation that the CISO has with the CFO, it's saying, we're going, we're currently vulnerable at with certain attack vectors, and we've seen and we have a perception that if we don't do something about it, we stand to lose $70 million at a certain with certain percentage, and if we do a certain action, we will reduce that. How do you help the CISO translate this from hand waving numbers that are abstract to something quantifiable? Because a lot of these threats are theoretical until they become real, right? That's
Yeah.
the nature of the beast here. How do you then, what do you see CISOs doing, or maybe that Qualys is doing, that helps actually ground the conversation to be much more practical and much more tangible?
Yeah, I think there are two key components there. First is knowing your asset inventory, which almost nobody knows. So that's actually one of the key foundations of our platform is how do we get you all of the assets that are your digital footprint, and then aligning them to your businesses. So at the end of the day, the CISO is a C-level executive or a SVP level executive that is reporting to the board, and they need to know the business of the company. They need to know what are the critical business units, which applications are the most critical that make money, and what is the annual revenue. So risk quantification does not have to be a super complex PhD level, formula and stuff like that. A lot of our customers at the beginning of this journey, they just basically pencil down, look, I'm a company that is $1 billion company, and I'm at a high level. We have 5 business units, and we know each business unit makes this much money, and I know that these assets are aligned with this business unit, these assets are aligned with this business unit, and you can start from there. And so the key for any risk management is value at risk. So what is your value at risk? And if you don't quite exactly know right now, look, if this attack happens, I will lose 50 million, 100 million. A lot of our CISOs in the initial part of the journey, actually, they just start off by penciling down the total revenue of that particular business unit as a starting point, and then get
Interesting.
better at working with the team to say, so as an example, Qualys, the way we report to the board, we have like 13 platforms globally in different countries, and each platform we know has an annual cohort of customers, and those customers, we know how much annual revenue they make. So the way
Sure.
we report is to say, look, here's 13 business units. This is how much money we make per or per platform every year. And currently, what is the score? And what you want to see is that you want to go from highest business annual business unit revenue down to the lowest, but then you want the risk to go inverse. The risk score should be the lowest risk score should be on the highest value business unit, right? And then each company, based on their domain, has to work to figure out. And this is an evolution. This is a part that everybody's now working to figure out. But what is your possibility of loss? Now, I
Sure.
say this a lot is today there is less and less of a concern from in the way that the business thinks from reputational damage. Because when was the last time you changed your provider because they send you a letter saying that your data might have been compromised? We don't. So if we are not changing our provider, the provider is not feeling as much of a financial burden from reputation. However, they may be a significantly more concerned about an outage that can be caused by a cyber attack,
Sure.
right? If a cyber attack causes an outage,
Maybe somebody heard of the CrowdStrike outage and what that caused, so it makes sense. Yeah.
right, and that could have been caused by a cyber attack similarly, right? So that is a big concern. So you have to decide as a company. However, if you're in healthcare, you are more concerned about the healthcare records
The
because
PII, etc. Yeah.
exactly. But if it's otherwise today fines and everything, but what happens is that people know that there is a playbook. If there is a compromise, they get mandiant. It's all happening on the side, right? You have a PR company and everything, but your business is continuing. You're continue to handle transactions and stuff like that. The challenge comes when, okay, I cannot handle transactions for a day. Like that's really much more disastrous to the business. So every company has to evolve to for the CISOs to start to figure out. But any company as a starting point, like it's not that difficult to start with quantification with some of the basics, because as an executive you should know what are the annual revenues from the different business units, and then start to pencil down some values. But I think as collaboration between cyber insurance companies and companies like us and quantification companies becomes more and more mature, this information can be available directly through the platform, where you can say like, hey, I'm a financial company of this size. Then we can say typically the payout for cyber insurance tends to be less than $20 million. So like a $20 million policy can cover up to 92% of claims that come out from a company of your size in your area. So those are the points of evolution. However, it is we cannot continue to report vulnerability counts and how many buckets open in the cloud type findings to the board or to the CFO. It doesn't mean anything. If you go to them and say we have zero trust, doesn't mean anything. If you tell the CFO we're going to implement multi-factor authentication, it still doesn't mean anything, right? All they want to know, and we see this in the boardroom, right? The CISO goes and gives an update. We spent 2 years implementing multi-factor authentication, and then the board goes, okay, great. So how much safer are we? But that I cannot tell you, right? So the CFO is thinking, look, if I give you $1 billion, you're still not going to say we're fully safe. So I'm just going to give you $500,000 because the answer doesn't change. So now it is, how do we anchor ourselves? Because we cannot continue. There is no open tap in like where every year we just continue to spend 20-30% more in cybersecurity, which means that we have to align the risk to how much to the business, and then decide based on that how much to spend in tooling and how much to spend in your cyber insurance. And that's
Absolutely.
where we partnered with cyber insurance to provide customers with a additional discount on their insurance premium if they are able to showcase and show a unified scoring mechanism that basically tells the cyber insurance company that that this risk level is low. So these are all sort of new pioneering areas, and as you can see, this is not about some magic technology that we have, which is going to find the malware hidden inside a binary that is loaded in memory and stuff like that. I think those are all things that are tactical. Of course, the evolution needs to happen, but at a business level, the need to have risk quantification and conversation around a risk operations center is very important. The CISO should be able to walk into a board meeting and say, my 2025 cybersecurity strategy is not that I'm going to implement encryption on my disk. It has to be, we are going to implement a risk operations center where we can fully operationalize our risk, collect assets and findings from all different tools, actually figure out what we don't need to fix, because many companies are spending time fixing things that do not have an impact to the business, which is wasted innovation, which is wasted time from development team. I mean, these code scanners as an example, these code scanners that do static code analysis will throw you millions of findings, but like maybe only 1% of those actually cause risk. If you have your developers spend so much time fixing that, so how do you anchor that to risk? And that's why we are so excited about where we are going with this journey, because now the conversation is not, hey, you have to replace your tool with what we have. It is really about, how can I provide you a visibility across the tools that your team already likes, but then anchor it into what is the real risk to the business, and what is the dollar value risk.
I love it. Sumedh, before we wrap up, what is the biggest advice that you would give to cybersecurity founders and entrepreneurs today, as the space is heating up, it's changing all the time, risk is evolving, Qualys is evolving? What is the biggest advice you would give them?
As a product leader for so many years, the one thing that I have learned is you really need to listen to your customers and what is the challenge that they are trying to solve. And you might have some absolutely amazing technology, but if it doesn't solve a customer challenge that they really need to focus on, then it is not going to be something that's going to be widespread. And so the two things I tell founders when they look at is to say, target for ubiquity, like find the solution that's going to be needed by everybody. And so when I say, well, who needs risk quantification, literally everybody that is actually in cybersecurity, right? You need to quantify your risk, because that's the definition of risk. You have to quantify it. So that is something that I tell people to focus on, is can you create something that can be ubiquitous? And then the second thing is anchor yourself in the outcome for the customer. So I know people are excited today about AI and all of that, but at the end of the day, the customer doesn't necessarily care whether you're using AI or you're using 1,000 camels or whatever, to do the work. It is, at the end of the day, they're looking for an outcome which is accurate, which is fast, and which is cost effective. And it just so happens that the particular technology can be helpful to them. So don't focus too much on the technology. Focus what the technology can achieve as an outcome for a customer, and that is what is going to make you successful.
Incredible. Sumedh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, your energy. This was a great conversation, and I very much enjoyed it myself. And I'm sure there are many others listening as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Thank you.